Okay, I had to readjust. That's sort of the process that I go through. The talking was definitely making decisions a little bit more difficult, but we're going to continue on. Just again playing. Okay, that's all in. I'm just playing with the. So we're going to do 4, 6. Just go 3x here. Now to dominate a table, it's not easy. It is pretty tricky, but Queen 7. It's sometimes the art of the play comes down to the table image and the way that your playing style is. A lot of times I see YouTube videos on poker that excessively talk about the right decisions and the right moves in different spots, but if the players at the table see you as a weak player, then you're going to get exploited more than not. Here we have Queen Jack of Hearts. Hella Rockets is re-raising the cutoff. I'm gonna put this one down just because I'm facing tens or better, more than likely in a tight aggressive player's range. And it was a good flop, but let's still have to see how these players play because I'm not going to be comfortable making calls against tight players that have the goods. So until we know how they play or how their range pans out, we can't really play much. He could have kings, king, queen, or better, and it's a costly. It's a negative investment to not know how the other players play. You just come into a room and you say, "Oh, I have kings or I have aces. Great, well then play them." But see, we're seeing that he's doing a lot of raising here, so we're gonna call and see how he's going about it. We flopped a gut shot, straight flush draw. We have some outs. We're gonna call him down here. Checks the turn with the jack. Let's bet it here. We're gonna bet a half pot, see what we get. So nothing came through. If he's flush drawing, he missed. So usually as kind of a protective measure, I don't think 11 is good, but I'm just gonna bet 15, see what happens and look him up, or see if he looks me up. 9. So he did have a reasonable hand, that one. And I would do that only because if I didn't put that blocker in, chances are he would be betting. And then I would have to call, and then that's a horrible spot to be in. So I would rather put the least in a situation where I don't really know if I'm good or not, rather than have to call and make a decision. So I like to put him in the driver's seat sometimes. Yeah, with that, I really wanted to just look him up. It was a $15 show me your hand type of thing. But we did know that he raised pre-flop with 6-9 of clubs. So we can get a good feel of what type of player he is, and that's important. You get that just tapped $15 just tapped us into a range that if we stay at this table long enough with him, we have exploited. That $15 will go very far because we'll know that he spends $8 for every weak to middle part of his range that you can exploit. So that's good. That's a great thing. We have here pocket sevens. Flop comes king 4, deuce, 2 diamonds. In a situation like this 4-way, I'm going to check because we have 3 other players. So we're going to see what happens here and if anyone's deciding to play into strength. Now Hella Rockets, we have to see again what he's up to because he's a sneaky guy. He plays his hands pretty sneaky. But in this case, since we have a sort of a tell, sort of a behavior here, he's on the button and he's betting. So if we could take a look into the maybe raising, which I wouldn't be all too bad with, just to, again, this is more of an experimental thing. We can see exactly where he's at. And what he's playing with, because he's been doing a lot of raising, and either he's running very good or he's making moves. And that turn card wasn't the best, but I still don't mind it. I don't know. I don't think he would be calling with a flush draw. I think he has a king, and the diamond might concern him a little bit. So let's see what he does on the turn. We're going to check. And he checks back. So this is an interesting situation. Chances are he's playing the king, and the turn card got him scared. So let's give this a shot and see what happens. There you go. So I put him on a king, and maybe if at the very, very worst, a weak diamond, or at the very best, a weak diamond. There he goes again, raising. So we can exploit this player. Definitely exploitable. So we're gonna start to take advantage here and see what we can get from him, because he's clearly playing a lot of hands. And so we flop middle pair with a 5 kicker. I would feel this is good, so we're gonna let's just I'm about half or 3/4. Let's go 3/4. Let's play into him. And a player like Hella Rockets will be exploited. So we're gonna go 6 here, raise a 6 in the cutoff, and see what we got here. Okay, so the big blind, the button raises 3 times my bet. I'm out of position. Actually, second act. I don't know too much about this player. Bane Kanoda, I haven't played a lot, but I'm going to fold. Just because I still want to see how he plays. Usually tight, aggressive players know what they're doing. And I haven't seen him betting a lot. So for him to make a raise like that, on the button or not, it's pretty meaningful. And I could have definitely gone broke there with Jack, and most people that called thinking they had pot odds would have definitely gone broke. Mainly because he's for the 10 minutes I've been here, he has the tight aggressive image. So I put him on high jack, ace jack, queens, kings are better. And not to toot my own horn, but this is how I play, and I have a very exploitable style myself. I still have, leaks that I'm still looking to fix, but overall, I play a winning style of play. Mainly comes down to the fold and fold equity. And when I know how to exploit a player's fear, that's a hot spot, because there are a lot of times where players have the best hand, but they clearly don't think they have the best hand. That happens more times than not at a poker table. It's scary. It's that if you become aware of that, you could put people to sleep. You could put them in a sleeper hold. This is, Nature Boy Ric Flair style sleeper hold. We're talking, they will not come out of that hold after you get that fear read on them. And from experience, I've gone through that shit before with players that I thought were better than me, and I always thought, wow, ace king is no good here, but I flopped top pair. Why are they re-raising me, check raising me on the turn with a blank? What's up with that? What the hell's going on here? And I would always think, against certain players, they had the better hand when I started out, and it's just not true. It's a fallacy. It's most of the times you have the better hand, and that's all there is to it. Mathematically, if you're more of a favorite on the flop with your hand, top pair, top kicker, our top pair, second best kicker, more times than not, you're good. And against a tight player or, a player who's a little fishy or a little tricky, as long as you didn't have much opposition pre-flop, your hand is good. It's worth calling. Okay, so in this case, and going to the river on. Okay, so in this case, we have ace jack and first act at so early position. We're gonna raise here. We're gonna raise to 16, just because it's a healthy raise for ace jack, and this guy has been playing a lot of hands. So we missed the flop, but we're gonna bet out anyway. And there you go. It's an easy pot to take because you're representing strength. You're representing a very large bet size out of the median, and he either hit the flop or he didn't. So that very, very, I wouldn't say very, very loose, but semi-loose player is losing most of the times more than he's winning, which is incredible. So another thing I like to talk about here is whenever I win or I start to rack up wins, a tilt management strategy that I employ, a strategy that I use to kind of just keep my equilibrium balanced with emotional, output and stuff, is I don't like to play a lot of, I guess you would say, medium strength hands in spots where, I could go broke with them. So Queen Jack, for example, or King Jack, it's a perfect example where I pretty much am not going to just raise and go on a turn, because that's the one way to broke. So in this case, I flop top pair, pretty good kicker. I'm going to check raise here and try to extract some value out of Vegetables Aren't Yummy, who's been playing sort of tricky, but most of the times than not, I don't put him on things. Now, with that hand in particular, we could have gone to the river. However, in the case of how he plays, it could have, and I've seen it multiple times. You see, he's raising. I'm going to fold just for sake, but normally I would exploit with that hand. Most of the time, I see the check down, and what checking down does from a player's perspective who's a pretty tight player who wants to protect their equity is the check down from a loose player will give that loose player a better chance of catching up with their range. I hope that makes sense. And you're losing a strong hand to a loose player because you are virtually giving up equity for free. So in that case, I'm not going to make a case for that last hand with Queen Jack, but I will say that in most cases, if that was aces or kings or top pair strong kicker, I would still bet the way I did against a player like that. Now against a player who is a little bit loose and doesn't really know what he's doing, yeah, I probably would give him a little bit of a rope to hang himself with. But in this case, perfect example. So we flop middle set here. What do? Do we bet, possibly lose value and lose the player, or do we check? So I'm going to just check here, and I'm willing to give up the hand just to see what happens, because if the turn comes an ace, you can see this with a player like this, he's playing total dog shit, but you're going to still exploit them on bluffy, on bluffy bets. That's what you're going to do. The turn's not going to make sense. He could either read it as, oh, does he have the ace? Does he have a king? But you're not going to get a lot of value out of a player like this, even with the best hand, because they give up so soon. It's almost pointless. I would just say bet the flop and lose him, because more than likely you're not going to get that money, that value in the later streets from them, because they're playing total junk. And there's a lot of online players that do this. They play 5-6, 6-3, 4-10 offsuit. They're just playing garbage, and it really comes down to knowing your player. That's what it comes down to. In this case, tight aggressive player. Well, actually, I'm sorry. I stand corrected. Snadley, he's, I would say, more loose aggressive. Just for the thought moments here. I'm gonna run the time bank. He's loose aggressive. I don't see him bet out a lot, but he is betting on deuce, ace, king of diamonds board, and it's a little scary. So for us, we're gonna fold. No sense on trying to catch up with no hand. Even if he has the worst hand, you're still not gonna get equity out of him if you make the best hand on a board like that. So pass. Cool. Guys, I hope this is helping a lot. I'm going to stop the video short just because I'm not looking to play poker for the rest of the day. I'm myself kind of going to do some studying and so forth. But if you like these videos, let me know. And, we could definitely try to do more of them. But the essence of poker is the player. And if you don't have a player who's really, savvy, or they play in a certain style that's very loose or aggressive, you're going to have a better chance of catching up to them on the turn of the river. And this is something that I recently found out through a heads-up game, where I was playing heads-up on online not too long ago, and I saw that there was a player that was exploiting my post-flop raises, because I did a lot of check raising, and I was trying to gauge this player's capacity for bluffs and for cards, and he happened to be catching. He was catching more hands than I was, so there was the element of, there was just a better variance for him. But one thing I remember is I didn't take him to the turn of river much, and once it got to the turn, we both kind of just gave up because he called with so many hands on the flop, synchronously, one after the other, that I became fed up. I was like, fucking hey, this is horrible. Excuse my language, but this is horrible. This is not the way that I was trained to play poker, to lose, 7 out of 10 hands. But then I realized something very, very special or very important, that even though he was catching more cards, I shouldn't have been betting. That was my mistake. That was my issue. And as soon as that clicked, it was the aha moment. That aha moment when you realize what you're doing is wrong, it's incorrect, and then you change it, and you're just all of a sudden a better player. You say, wow, that's really what I needed to do all this time. So I stopped I lowered the aggression factor by about 50% at least. And we made it to the turn and river more, and this player was showing down middle and bottom pair most of the time, because I was allowing him the image that I was betting air, so he believed his bottom pair was good, which that was my fault for becoming overly aggressive on a turn. And this is when I first started playing heads up against no limit players. So that was really a changing point when when he said towards the end of the session, he said, I asked him if there's anything I could do to improve, what would it be? He said, well, slow down your post-flop aggression factor. You're betting too much on the flop, and get to the turn and river and see what happens, because there's a lot of potentials that, busted flush or straight draws. There are, pick up on open-ended draws that come on the turn. There's so many new opportunities and new situations that present themselves on the turn and the river. So I've heard this time and time again, but no real, a strong river bet really indicates strength, and a strong river re-raise really indicates strength. But I will tell you how many times that has been proven wrong. That theory is not a complete theory, because in heads up or in 6-handed or 9-handed games, there will be players that, if their profile, that they're easily exploitable on a river check raise. You put in a healthy, strong check raise, they're out with top pair. And that's all because you allowed the turn on the river to develop. And to them, they could be exploiting your image or seeing your image as loose aggressive and you're tricky or whatever, and you play a certain style. And then all of a sudden, you start catching turn and river, and you're like, oh, okay, well, this guy, the way he's been playing so many hands, he could have it. He could have queen jack. He could have just turned to straight. Or he could have rivered the straight. There's so many opportunities that are out there. I would imagine Phil Ivey plays in this sense, where you use as a craftsman, as an artisan. You're not creating bread. I mean, as a real poker artist, you're learning the best spots. See, poker is more of an art than a science, but there's a lot of science too that is undeniable about the game that can be used to a gainful advantage. But the art is still there, and without the art, you're going to be more than likely a break-even player. That's the reality. So the art comes in on the turn in the river, because anyone could bet on the flop, anyone, and you could check raise the flop all day. But the turn in the river are the money spots, and that's where most successful players get paid. That's enough for today. I think I've given you enough information, but this is a 1-2 no limit online poker game that I decided to record. I hope it helped everyone. I'm a live player reg in Southern California, and I've been playing online for off and on before and after Black Friday for about 5 years, and I hope I can give back anything that I've earned from the community to the community, and hopefully we can exploit each other, because I'm always open to that. I don't mind giving out information to play. If you know my playing style, I will adapt, and poker is a game of adapting, and best players are adapting all the time to good and bad players and so forth. So if you think I'm a bad player, if you play, then that's great, because I'll be exploiting your good play, and vice versa. So have a great day, guys. Thanks for listening and watching, and signing off. Take care.